Hey, I want to welcome you back to the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific. And we are continuing on with sex, dating, relationships, and everything in between with two amazing women, Melania and her best friend, Yashna. Hello, ladies. We were joking about the car, but you are best friends, aren't you? Okay, and since we've last had Melania on, she's become Miss Hibiscus, so thank you for joining us as well. Good to have you here. Not wearing your sash though.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Or your crown.
Oh gosh, I should carry it wherever I go.
But thank you for everyone who tuned into that podcast. Melanie has so much great feedback. I think just particularly young women really inspired by your life, your decisions, and how you're living. So thank you. And Yashna, maybe just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Yashna. I am 24 years old. I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's in psychology and social work. And I'm really passionate about helping young women and girls, allowing them to learn through my experiences really, and just be the voice that I needed when I was younger.
Yeah, it's really important. Now, Melanie, we're not going to pretend that everyone does know who you are, because I have people on Facebook who don't live in Fiji as well. So maybe tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Melania Tora. I'm 24 years old. I'm from Natalau Sanbeto with maternal links in Dalivoni, Laos. Sorry, this is my whole hibiscus intro. I might as well say it. I memorized it, said it so many times. I'm currently studying my master's in psychology, and I'm a youth leader at Fiji Connection.
Yeah, fantastic. And she's one of my best friend's daughters too. So we've all got friends. Shout out to Liliana.
Shout out to your mom.
Does she watch these? I don't know. Anyway, today's episode is what the girls wish the guys knew. Now, recently we did one with the guys on what the guys wish the girls knew, so it's only fair that we give the girls a voice. Now, Melania and Yashna are not representing all the girls of the world. These are their views, so you might have different views, so we would love to hear them, and feel free to put them in the comment or send me a message. But these two young ladies sent to me some things during the week of what they wished the guys knew. So we're just going to I'm going to read what you've sent to me, and then you can explain, but I think they're really good things. So we'll start with you, Melania. Your first one was you wish the guys knew that you don't want to be touched.
Yeah. So I know that's a very general thing. I think I can elaborate a bit on that more, especially after my experience in Hibiscus. I know what exactly I don't like. And I guess the big difference between men and women, when we're taking photos and stuff, is men tend to I guess touch you wherever. They kind of have that I guess confidence that they can do that to a woman. And I guess for me, I just want them to know that, there's an appropriate way to touch a woman, especially if you're not, related to her or you're not dating her. And I think that for Fijian men in general, there's not that boundary that I've noticed for myself. So that's something that really doesn't sit well with me.
So, because another thing this kind of fits in with your second point, you wish they knew that it would be nice to be asked.
Yeah, definitely.
So are they meant to ask you when you're taking a photo, can I put my hand on your shoulder, or what? How does that work?
Yeah, with the asking, I think it just takes a little, I don't want to say this to sound rude, but common sense. I mean, keeping your hand above, the top half would just be a safe kind of area, just on the shoulder or right next to them. But I would like to be asked if they, if they want to put their hand around my waist or something. But generally, I just really don't like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like even if they did ask, I'd be like, no, thank you.
Now, there could be people listening to this going, what's wrong with this woman?
I know.
But this is a sign of self-respect, really, that, I always tell people the last guy who tried to touch me inappropriately actually got kicked. So, now he was really inappropriate, where he was trying to touch me, and it shocked me, and I turned around and kicked him. But our bodies, and this is really important for girls, our body's ours, and no one should touch us where we don't feel comfortable without asking.
Definitely.
And sometimes people get carried away. So if you were in a dating relationship, say you started dating Johnny next week, would you be expecting him to ask you, can I hold your hand, can I kiss you?
Well, I've never been in a relationship, so I'm not really sure how that all works. But I think for me, the first time, probably yes. But after that, I feel like we could journey with the whole physical contact thing together. Like, that's not something that I only dictate by myself. But yeah.
Yeah. And these are really important conversations. And I've mentioned it a few times on this podcast because you never know what's the background of the young women you're dating, what they've been through, what triggers them. And so just sometimes we think when we're in a relationship, they're mine, their body's mine. Oh, now I own them. So really good things. Is this something you would share as well, Yashna?
Yes, I feel like there's also a cultural and religious aspect to it because not every culture, not every religion allows a man to touch a woman, right? So it's always just the safer thing to do to ask, or even like Melania was saying, just abstain from touching certain parts of your body. Like if you want to put your hand on my shoulder, there has to be some sort of, I feel like, prior connection. I have to know you in some capacity for you to be able to touch me like that, because you can't just be a stranger and feel that sense of comfort
Yeah.
to touch me in any sort of way, you know? Yeah, so I feel like there has to be some capacity of knowing each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And communication is just a key to
Definitely.
these things, and especially when you're dating and in relationships, communication. No, thank you. Very insightful and important to know our worth as young women. Okay, Yashna, you had written a really good one here. You wish the guys understood the value of wanting wife and kids versus the value of wanting to be a husband and a father. So we need some explanation on that one.
Right. There's so much in terms of being, in terms of wanting a wife and kids, there's so much, buzz around it, right? Like, oh, I have a wife, I have a kid, but are you a present father? Are you an active husband? Are you leading your family? Are you in a position where you're constantly trying to better yourself, trying to equip yourself to be the best kind of person to fit those roles, right? I mean, and we see this a lot in our generation as well, where people have children, people get married, but they don't understand what encompasses the role. You need to, if these are things that you want in your life, there's a certain level of preparation that goes into it. It's not something that you decide off of a whim. It's not something that you just stumble into. These are very active decisions you have to make. And for example, in being a husband, are you prepared to take care of your family? Are you prepared to take care of your wife? Are you prepared to lead her in a loving way? Are you prepared to show up for her when it matters the most? And it goes vice versa as well. If you want to be a wife, are you preparing yourself for these situations? Are you preparing yourself for the hard circumstances, And then when it comes to children, do you know what it takes to be there for a child? Do you know what it takes to raise a child? Do you know what it takes to build self-confidence and instill values in your children? Stuff like that. You don't just, it's not something that happens to you in life. It's something that you have to choose actively every single day. And you have to show up in it every single day.
Yeah. So it is.
Thank you.
Isn't it? It's inspiring. And that's what good women want, is a guy who's going to show up. And hopefully a guy wants a girl who's going to show up. You don't want to just marry a guy who's then going to sit on the couch and ignore you or the kids.
Absolutely.
That is just so incredibly frustrating. And again, I think we've done some episodes on how you can prepare now for marriage with some of the guys, because it starts now, preparing who we are. Did you want to add anything to that bit, Melania?
No, I think that's just so good. And a huge part in that is like having accountability in your singleness. I think that's so important. So like in our church, we've started the World Needs a Father program, and I feel like that's really built relationships among the men to journey with the men who aren't in marriage yet, and just build that, this is what you need to expect, because experience is like the best teacher. And so to share that with our younger men is just so good. I
So
love that
good.
we're doing that now.
Yeah.
Just to add on to what she said, we see so many issues coming up in the Pacific right now: HIV, drugs, all of these terrible, terrible things that maybe 20, 30 years ago weren't nearly as prominent. And a lot of it stems from an incomplete family unit,
Yeah.
an absent father, an absent mother, neglectful parents, really. I mean, if we fix the way that we view relationships and marriage and the commitment of it all, I think a lot of these problems could be curbed very, very quickly.
Yeah. Really
Definitely.
fast. And I would like to add, we wish the guys knew that we want them to have good male friendships. So we don't want to be their only friend. We want them to be, it's part of the accountability, but having good friends that call them higher and better, which is so important. We'll talk a bit more about that shortly. I think that's one of your points too. But Melanie, you wish the guys understood how important kindness and listening is, how much we as women value that in our friendships with men.
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, why? That's such a good question. Why kindness and listening? I think just personally with my interactions with men, it's been a bit difficult, because I feel like a lot of them talk at me instead of talking to me. And as someone who is, in psychology, I do a lot of listening. And so for me, like finding an ideal partner, or like wishing that I had more male friends that would listen to me instead of explaining every single thing. And kindness, I just feel like is something that is just lacking, more like being considerate of women, and what's going on with them. I've had a lot of like and I think Yashna will touch on this a little later, but things explained to me, and in a very like, you're not as smart as me kind of way. So I think just being aware that, you know, we can have an intellectual conversation as equals. Like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I know less than you, and approaching the conversation in that way.
And where does that come from? Is that cultural, or what is it that men might think that you don't have brains?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's cultural, but I've experienced it in other countries as well.
Yes.
So I think it's just part of being, in a patriarchal society, because I have experienced that in other countries around the world. But I mean, I guess with the men in the parts that I've been to, in the countries that I've been to, that's just been, I guess, the starting point. So I don't know where exactly it comes from, but I don't think it's cultural only.
No.
Yeah.
No. I think it exists in every nation around the world. What does listening look like? How do you know
Oh.
if you've been listened to? Because it's not just sitting there nicely and they're probably thinking, oh, I want to kiss you or something. How do you know if you're in a
Yeah.
relationship and you've been listened to?
For me, a big indicator that someone's listening is their facial expression, how they interact with you while you're talking. So active listening, nodding, just being engaging. But also, I love I love when men like bring up things, or even my friends, they bring up things that I've told them before, which makes me like really understand, oh, they were listening. They were like listening to what I was saying. So, remembering those little things and bringing it up, and then talking to it, like adding their own points, I think makes for a great conversation.
You really felt listened, and the
Yeah.
fact that they've thought about it,
Yeah.
and again, vice versa too. Us women have to. I don't know if we've
Definitely.
learned how to listen, especially in this day and age of so much communication on the phone. But it's really another great way just to value one another. So kindness and listening is a really attractive quality, men. um, okay, Yashna, what did you have here? Yes, let's talk about the mansplaining. You,
Right.
you wish that you weren't mansplained. What is that exactly?
This this kind of echoes what Melanie was just talking about. The consideration in it is also definitely an aspect. But a lot of the times, like she was saying, men tend to talk at you and they treat you as if you're lesser than. especially when you're having, like you said, an intellectual conversation, instead of you can kind of feel a sense of like they're talking down at you, that they don't think you're on their level intellectually, that they think that you're smarter than you. And this happens a lot of the time, even when you're superior in the field, or even if you're more experienced in maybe that's your field of education, maybe that's where you work, maybe that's where you volunteer, or you have real lived experience in these areas. But a lot of the time men feel the sense of entitlement to re-explain what you've just told them, but in a very condescending kind of manner. And I feel as though sometimes it's not intentional, but it just comes across as very demeaning. And
Do you think they're aware that they're doing it?
I don't think that a lot of them are aware, and this some of them, it comes back to listening to understand versus listening to respond.
Yes.
So if you're listening to just respond, you're going to pull at loose strings here and there and try to mansplain whatever I've just told you.
Yeah.
But if you're listening to understand, then, and if you have a teachable spirit,
Yes.
then maybe you can learn something from this conversation. Maybe I can learn something from this conversation. And it's okay not to know everything about everything. You know, we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and we operate within our capacity. And sometimes it's okay to be limited within our capacity.
Yeah. And asking questions isn't a weakness either.
No,
Yeah.
definitely
So
not.
I was last week in a meeting where the speaker really encouraged us to be curious. And sometimes when you're talking, not just to men, but also women, I'm like, oh, you're not listening, you haven't heard, because they've assumed. So sometimes I think, you know, a good quality is, so what do you mean by that, Yashna?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah,
But I really
definitely.
feel for our men as well, because I feel like, especially in our culture, they're expected to know everything.
Yes.
You know, they're expected to have all of the answers. So I understand
Yeah.
why they would start off on that foot, but I think, yeah, we've got a good point here with, like, it doesn't have to be that way, and just releasing them from that burden that's not meant to be on them.
That's a great point. So you don't have to know everything. You can be curious, and we can learn together, because I think there's something powerful to learn from each other, isn't there? And together. So, okay, mansplaining. There we go. Finally, Melania, you wish guys understood the impact of their friends on their life.
Definitely.
So they don't understand that.
I don't think that they understand how much of an impact their friends have on their lives. I've met so many great God-fearing men who just surround themselves with the worst type of people, and then they continue to fall back into the same types of, you know, derogatory conversations, just negative, you know, conversations about women especially. And I can just tell that it really weighs down on them and the way that they view women. And so I feel like if I was to, you know, talk to men like all around, I'd just be like, you know, your friend group matters. Who you hang around with matters. Like, they really shape who you are. And even if you don't see just how big of an impact they're having, doesn't mean the impact isn't there. And we see it, we notice it, and yeah, I think that's for that.
Someone said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
That's
So
so true.
who we hang around with has a big impact.
Absolutely.
Do you want to speak into that, Yashna?
Because we see so often, and we hear it a lot, you're a product of your environment.
Yes.
And your friends are your environment. If you're hanging around liars and cheaters and, you know, people who have just a very different lifestyle than what you're trying to accomplish in life, definitely that's going to have an impact on you. And like Melania was saying, maybe you don't see it personally because the impact is so gradual, but to us, it's very blatant.
Yeah.
And so it does make a difference. If you surround yourself with good, God-fearing people, and it's not to say that you can't be friends with everybody, but you just pick and choose the company that you most consistently hang around with, you know?
Who is influencing your life? That's
exactly.
really
How are they sewing into you?
Yeah.
What are they sewing into you?
Yeah. Do they hold you accountable for
Yes.
the things that you do wrong, or are they cheering you on in your wrongs? I think that's a really common one.
Absolutely.
Yep. No, well, there's some amazing points, and I'm sure there's so much more. And I know that people out there, the women out there, are probably saying, say this, but today. The interview has been with these two young ladies, but send us in your points. Before we end, is there anything particularly that you'd like to say to your brothers out there, to the men, just to encourage them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think I just want to say that we don't hate you. Despite we've just been talking about what we, what we wish you'd know, but I think that, we also have our faults, and I think that there's a lot of grace to go around, but please take this as not something to criticize you, but something to help you a little bit, something that we really appreciate in men, and yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I also, just to add on to that, she said it perfectly. I also think that we bring so much value in different areas, and it's so beneficial to our society, especially if we work on bringing those different fruits out of each other instead of just talking each other down. So this is not criticism. Like she was saying, it's definitely, there are so many things that we do love about men. I mean, we need both men and women to have this world going. And yeah, thank you so much for being men.
Yeah. Well said. Well said, as two very kind-hearted, compassionate women. No, we need our brothers, and it's good to hear from each other. We heard from the guys, and now it's great to hear from you. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll be back next week for another